Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Chadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you would join us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. We're really excited today. Our guest is Sue Atkins. She is a BBC and Disney TV parenting expert. She is here to let us know how we can give our kids the gift of confidence and self-esteem. Before we invite Sue into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram, at JedleyMagic on Twitter. We would also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. When you're there, you can sign up for our free newsletter. You can also use the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing great. Let us know what we're not doing so great. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from right outside beautiful London in the United Kingdom. Our guest is here today to share some fantastic parenting tips. She is a parenting expert for the BBC and for Disney. Please welcome to the show, Sue Atkins. Hey, Sue, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. We're having a heat wave, so you can see I'm rather hot and bothered. But hey, I'm very, very good, thank you.
Hot and bothered is, I guess, better than being cold and dead.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's a choice, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, parenting. I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast. A lot of people think, oh, you have this love of literacy, and I do. And you really want kids to read, and I do. But the reason I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast is that I understand the relationship that I have with my now adult kids who are 26 and 29. And it's really a strong relationship. We're really close. I know that those relationships and the conversations that we are having today started when my kids were infants and I started reading to them. And so I started the Reading with Your Kids podcast to encourage families to read so they would get that bond, that closeness. If you want to talk to your kids about drugs and alcohol and all that other kind of stuff, the time to start is when they're babies. And you're not talking to your babies about drugs, but you're talking to your babies about flowers and what do they think about that. But you're the parenting expert. So what did I write when I launched the podcast?
Absolutely. Yeah, but as you're speaking, I'm just thinking, absolutely agree with you, because you build those bonds, you build that connection, you develop their thinking, critical skills. But it's more than that emotional connection you have with them and that openness and that willingness to share with them. And books and reading are actually quite a good way in for all sorts of topics, whether they're toddlers or teenagers. So by starting that off, by having that intention, by listening to them, by being interested in them, then you're absolutely right, because then you can have those big conversations naturally without sort of having to sit down and think about it. It just comes up naturally and you can deal with some of the things that you want to talk to them and the wisdom perhaps that you want to pass on to them.
You mentioned two things that I think are so important, and I think it's worth repeating over and over again. When we're reading with our kids, it's giving us a chance to listen to our kids and be interested in our kids. Can you talk a little bit more about why that's so important?
Well, underpinning all my work that I've done over the last, say, 18 years is about a passion to give a child the gift of self-esteem and hopefully a gift of confidence. And you do that by, there's a poster that goes around social media that says, children spell love T-I-M-E that I created, because I think it's so important to give your children time. They don't need all the fancy toys. They don't need all the fancy gadgets. Actually, at the end of the day, they still love T-I-M-E. So spend time with them, talking to them, not at them, reading to them, playing with them, eating with them around the table regularly, be actively involved in their lives. And I created this idea on a Feel Good Friday. It's called the ING activities. And that is cooking with them, playing with them, reading, all those ING kind of verbs, even if it's just riding bicycles with them. You are creating memories that last a lifetime. You're involved in their lives. It builds their self-esteem because they know that they're important. And then you can enjoy family life together and guide them, not sort of sledgehammer them if they're kind of sometimes going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. I love that. I think sometimes we forget, and especially when our kids get to be older and get to be in those middle grade ages of 12 and 13 and 14, where our kids' behavior and the words they're saying is, I hate you, I don't want to be with you. In reality, we are still the most important person in our kids' lives.
Without a doubt, you are so right. And people, parents come to me because they're finding the relationships are changing. You can't speak to your 14-year-old the same way as you did when they were 4. You have to bend and develop and change and go with the flow. They're actually becoming, interesting adults, but they've got one foot in sort of immaturity some days, the next foot in sort of maturity, because they're neither an adult, neither are they a child. So it's a difficult sort of transition, perhaps for everybody, but go with it. And I often found the teenagers so interesting because they get so interested in all sorts of things like climate change or poverty or, the news or politics, whatever it may be that is their interest. And so instead of trying to shove your thoughts down their throat, how about stepping back and listening to them and engaging with them and say, even simple things like, well, tell me why you like that video on TikTok. Why do you like that band? I don't think everything that's modern is awful, but balance it out with trying to get them off some of the social media and get them thinking and working out if it's fake news and all of that. So you can have really interesting conversations with your kids as they start maturing.
Yeah. I think that's really important. You mentioned, these things that we're hearing, TikTok and fake news and all these buzzwords that are buzzing around us all the time. And I think we really need to keep in the front of our minds as parents that we are responsible for helping our kids grow into the human beings that they're meant to be. We're not supposed to sit back and allow TikTok or the media or social media to raise our kids.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. We need to be proactive. We need to be open-minded, but we are their parent, not their friend. And we have been around longer. We do hopefully have a bit more wisdom. And so rather than it's how you say it, and it's when you say it, and it's what you say. But your tone of voice and your body language counts for so much, particularly with teenagers and with kids generally, but certainly in that sort of older bracket where they don't want to feel judged all the time, or they don't want to feel that you're a fuddy-duddy. But you have to nurture them. You have to kind of guide them. You have to sort of show them, because we are older. We are wearing the t-shirt. We've been there. We've done it. We've kind of, even if it's not TikTok, we've had similar stuff. We've been around a while. So that's why relationships are so important. And then we come back to the idea of even reading and talking and listening to our kids, because that nurtures the relationship that makes those conversations much easier later on.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Sue, but I would have had so much fun with social media and all the different technological tools that kids have these days. But I'm really glad they didn't exist, because I know that there would be some really cringe-worthy, embarrassing stuff and dumb things that I would have done that I would have displayed on social media, and it would have lived forever. And thankfully, the statute of limitations has run out. All the memories are gone. Most of the people are dead. And so no one has to know about those dumb things I did as a kid.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because children and young people live in the moment and they don't think about that. And yet you have to kind of guide them and explain to them in a way with it's the way you say it. But actually employers Google you before they even think about getting you into a job or going for an interview nowadays. So, that is the difficulty. If you put up some goofy, silly stuff up there, it's going to find that, it's going to find it's going to be behind you, it's going to be around you for quite a while. But that is youth, isn't it? And that's the difficulty, finding that balance so that we don't ban stuff, we don't put them off, but we try and show them that actually you've got to think a bit of a bigger picture to what you're up to.
Yeah. You mentioned something, you don't ban things. That's something I learned, and I just happened to be taking a media literacy course when my daughter was entering middle school. And one of the things, and it was surprising that the course was being taught by a Catholic nun. And the first thing she said in the class was, don't try to ban anything because they're going to see it. They're going to use it. They're going to be involved with it. Instead, engage with it. Sit down, experience it with your kid, and then talk about it. And what fantastic advice that was.
Right. Fantastic advice. That is absolutely on the money, as we say over here in the UK, because that is the secret to it. Because as soon as you ban something, it becomes incredibly interesting, doesn't it? And the teenage years are all about taking risks and pushing against your values and pushing against what you stand for, because they're trying to find their own values and find out. They come through that phase. But that's so great. That's why I say don't ban things, find balance in it, get engaged in it, get interested in it. You may not really want to get involved with it long term, but they'll appreciate the fact that you are curious with them, and it will start conversations, which is what it's all about, really.
Yeah. And what a great way to talk to our kids about the fact that whatever they put out there online lives forever. Sit down, watch a goofy TikTok video with your kids, laugh about it, then talk about, whoa, what do you think is going to happen when this person goes for a job? The employer is going to see that. Do you think that's going to help them get the job or not help them get into school? And that way, and the kids can add those things up in their own mind. So instead of sitting down and saying, don't you dare put something online that's embarrassing, they figure it out themselves. They're going, oh, yeah, I laughed, and, yeah, that's going to come back to haunt that person.
Loads better that way, isn't it? Because the more you try and tell, and the more you try and sort of actually a good open-ended question, they just leave it with them, because actually they'll go, gosh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good question.
Hey, what do we say with our kids? So we're talking about the fact that, hey, your employers are going to Google you. They're going to go on social media and see what you've been posting. When your kids turn around and go, well, that's not fair.
Well, life isn't fair, is it? There's another life lesson right there.
Oh, well,
but, it's about conversations, isn't it, I suppose? What would you have said?
That's exactly what I said, is, life's not fair, and I'm sorry. There's not a thing I can do about it.
Yeah, and that is a tough lesson to kind of learn, isn't it? These are the things, that's why I come back to time and time again with parents, is about giving them confidence to say things and not be frightened. I've noticed over the few years that I've been doing this, the 18 years, it's changed a bit. The dynamic is that parents want to be their kids' friend. Well, they've got loads of friends. They don't need you to be their friend. You can get on really well with them. Like you're saying, you get on so well with your kids. They're similar ages to both of mine, actually. And I get on enormously well with both of my kids too. But I don't really want to know some of that information about Saturday night. And then when I do need to be able to sort of call them out and say to my son, do you know what? I don't really want a text message for my birthday. I would really love you to send me a birthday card. I had to do that one recently, actually.
Well, you're right. It is. It's important. Sue and I we're joking about the fact that both of us learned the lesson that with our adult kids, it's really important for us to kind of sit back and when they're making choices and the choices don't necessarily align with what we would have chose, we need to learn to sit back and say, hey, if that makes you happy, that's wonderful. You're not hurting yourself. You're not hurting anybody else. Go for it.
Yeah. And that's what parents find very hard. And certainly you get so used to, don't you? When they're little, you're telling them all the time. You're teaching them all the time. And then that's that transition where I work with a lot of families going through change of the teenage years. And then, as we say, going into the adult years where you can't control some of that. You can have conversations around it, but you can't, make your kids live the life that you want them to live. It is about them finding their own way, isn't it? And you've empowered them, hopefully, with your values, with good sort of grounding character, so that when they go off and they do different things, perhaps you think, oh gosh, I don't know if I fancy that for myself, or did I really want them to do that? But they're going to learn loads that way, aren't they? They're going to fail forward is what I call it. They might make a mistake, but then they'll learn it, well, the hard way, but they'll learn it for themselves. Far more powerful than just you nagging them or telling them that that's going to be a disaster.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. What's the biggest topic that you're hearing from parents these days in your work, either for Disney or BBC? What seems to be the biggest concern that parents have?
Well, at the moment, certainly here in the UK, it's the cost of living crisis around finances. We have huge problems here with energy. We have, we're recovering from the pandemic. So I've got a series of talks that I'm planning actually for the autumn around post-pandemic parenting. If people want to let me know what are the key topics they'd like me to do those talks on, I'd love to hear from them, because it's not about me, it's about what you're struggling with. But certainly at the moment, it is around worry about how to talk and teach the kids. I've just written a blog actually around some tips of how to talk to your children about money. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. In fact, it's a learning opportunity, and say that things are going to change a bit. Things are a bit tougher. We won't perhaps have so many treats and so many outings that we might have had. You don't want to frighten them. You want to reassure them, whether they're toddlers or teenagers. But certainly with your 15-year-old, you could say, look, it's really expensive when you leave your console on or you leave your phone plugged in for so long and you don't turn stuff off after you finish. If you could pull together with us, that will save us on some of those bills. And with your 5-year-old, you can get them turning off the lights. Perhaps they can help you look for, food in the supermarket that's not a brand. They'll learn the idea of money and saving, but don't frighten them. They all need you to feel safe and secure. But these are some of the topics that I noticed. It's a post-pandemic parenting now. Also, some children are still suffering from anxiety and slight uncertainty. Now you throw that into the mix, they're having to really learn resilience. So on my website, actually, I've got a free ebook, The 9 Key Skills of Resilience, that you can download and read, just to give you some ideas around how to help your kids handle all this uncertainty that we're living through.
It certainly is a difficult time. We've talked here on the podcast, when you're talking about somebody like me who's almost 100 years old, 2 years being locked up, it's a drag, but it's 2% of my life. When you're talking about somebody who's 5, you're talking about a huge chunk of I can't do the math in my head real quick, but you're talking about almost half of their life being spent in lockdown, being spent in this time of panic and uncertainty and fear. And that's a lot.
Well, it is. But if you then take their life from that time, which is 2 years, and they're going to live, please God, till they're 80, it is only a pinprick of time for them. And so how you handle things is always what it's about. It's that oxygen mask. If you're in a good place, if you're well, if you're feeling strong, you're going to be in a far better place to be passing on calmness to your kids and being able to help them cope and help them with resilience. So, yeah, you see it in that whole term. I mean, I've done a lot of work with parents around their toddlers. I've got a toddler podcast myself, actually. It's called The Toddler Roadmap. I did 24 episodes of it because of parents, particularly of toddlers, anxious about shyness, about their language development, about their social skills with friendships, all sorts of things I cover because I wrote it because parents were asking me all the time, I'm worried about my toddler. Masks are up. They can't even read people's faces and expressions. So all of these things I thought, well, take down that anxiety. Here are some practical tips and advice. So if listeners are interested in toddlers, there's an absolute wealth of stuff over on my website around that stuff.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it's really, really important. I think our kids are going to be dealing, and we're going to be dealing with the after effects of this for many, many years.
We are. And it's a strange time to be alive, Don't even throw in the politics in America and in the UK. Don't even do that because I will just go for it. But it is a difficult time. So you have to look at ways that you can get back control so that you feel at least grounded and centered. Because then you will be acting that out for your kids. And they don't know anything different, actually, do they? This is their lives. They don't know that we didn't have to go through all of this before. But it's about how we handle it and how we empower them. Because life is all about handling change, actually, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's never all the same. Yeah. We're all growing older, even if you're 5 or you're 50. Everything is changing in life. And that's how you need to bend, not break. So these are gifts if we look at them as opportunities. I'm a glass half full kind of person, not a happy clappy Pollyanna, but I tend to see life in a more positive frame of mind. And so that you can pass that on to your kids, which will serve them in very good stead.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've shared here in the podcast is, and I know I think both of my kids, but I definitely know when my daughter kind of learned this lesson when she used to come out on the road and tour with me as I was doing my educational magic shows. And, when you're traveling around the country for 3-4 weeks at a time, stuff happens. And in the moments that those stuff happens, she was able to turn to me and say, this is going to make a good story someday.
Well, isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. And I think that that's a great way, even for us as parents, when we're going through something and we don't know how things are going to go out, I think it's perfectly okay to turn to our kids and go, well, I am not sure how this is going to turn out, but it's going to be a great story when we get through the other side.
I love that attitude. I just love that. I'm going to use that with parents, the idea of turning that into a great story. And we'll laugh perhaps about this at another time, That just puts things back in perspective, Jed. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. Hey, I know you have a lot going on. Tell us what are you doing at the BBC right now, and what are you doing for Disney that we can look for?
Yeah. Well, we're doing Time to Shine with Disney, coming up to a new school year here in the UK. They go back to school in September. We're looking at giving kids the gift of self-esteem and confidence, beginning a new year, a new school year, and living through post-pandemic life, giving them that gift of confidence and self-esteem. So that's what we're working on. That's coming out soon. And with the BBC, I'm always talking on BBC Radio. They always ring me up about any topics that come up in the, topically, and they ask my advice and I chat. And also I'm on something called the Jeremy Vine Show, which is on Channel 5, where we have now a family talk slot where I talk all things parenting, and parents can ring in or write in or text in all around questions, and I sit and answer them and give them some practical solutions to some of this stuff. A lot of it is confidence building for parents too, just a bit of reassurance sometimes. I used to do a lot of Disney sitting on the sofas for over a year and a half actually, and we've changed direction a little, where people would come in live on Facebook and, would have a FaceTime, and I'd answer all their questions around any topics, around anything, for raising happy, confident kids, because that's what I'm all about, really.
Yeah. And raising confident kids and giving kids the gift of self-esteem, there's more to that than just saying, oh, you're special, you're wonderful.
You're so right. We're on the same song sheet, aren't we, all the time? Absolutely. It's got to be specific and it's got to be sincere. So when you say to them, oh my God, you're just so great, that doesn't really mean anything. But if you say to a child that's shown you a painting, say, I really love that yellow boat bobbing on that blue sea, and the way you put the umbrella up there, and that was the umbrella that we had, wasn't it? Red, blue and green. Be specific. A child really knows that you're paying attention to what they're showing you or what they're telling you. So it's very important to be specific in your praise. And there is a difference between encouragement and praise. So sometimes encourage them as well as just not just praising them for getting an achievement or a grade. Mm-hmm. Praise them for trying.
Yes, yes. And it all goes back to what you said at the start of the conversation, listening to kids and being interested in our kids, no matter what age they are.
And then that works both ways, isn't it? Because then they listen to you, they ask you questions, and you build a relationship, and you've built rapport with your kids, and they can come to you no matter what. That's a very important thing. No matter if they screw up. I remember my son came to us one Christmas and he'd screwed up with something, and he was sort of really embarrassed and all the rest. We sat down here with his dad and we had a chat. And, I was really pleased that he felt he could come and talk to us. We didn't judge him. We weren't very happy with what had happened. But, you're there no matter what. And I was really encouraged that he felt that he could come home, even though he was 28, and talk to us about that. It's important.
So important. And if we're listening to our kids and being interested in our kids when they're babies, then when we get to be old and we go back in diapers, they'll listen to us and be more interested in us.
And they choose our home, don't they? Our nursing home. So, yeah, you've got to be nice to them too.
Hey, Sue, where can people go, in addition to the BBC and Disney, where can people go to get those free resources you were mentioning and learn more about what's going on?
Well, there's a lady sitting on a yacht who's not me, called Sue Atkins. So I am the SueAtkins.com. But that's the one and only Sue Atkins. The other lady's sitting on this yacht and it's clearly not me. But it's a wealth of blogs, articles, videos, podcasts, you name it. I've been doing it for a long time because I'm very passionate about supporting parents raise happy, confident, resilient children.
Yeah, and I'm also on a website of yours that's SueAtkinsParentingCoach.com.
Yeah, that will defer you. If you put in the simple one, which is the SueAtkins.com, up that comes. That's just, I don't understand technology, but that is actually just the way it goes. So keep it simple. It's the SueAtkins.com, but it will come up to Atkins Parenting Coach. That's for SEO or whatever it's called.
We've had a really fun time and a really informative time listening and being interested in our guest, Sue Atkins. Hey, Sue, thanks so much for spending time with us and sharing this wealth of knowledge.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I love what you do. I love what you're saying. We're on the same song sheet around lots of things. It's been my utter pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Vasha Bajaj. She'll be here to celebrate her middle grade novel, Thirst. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, please do be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how you can be a guest here in the podcast. Find out how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and find out how we can celebrate your book with the world through our monthly promotion program. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Sue Atkins. Please be sure to visit her website, thesueatkins.com. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Bell Castro, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.